Morning. Hi. How you doing? I've just listened to part two from the Andy Hale podcast where he's interviewing David Rose. They say during the podcast, I think Andy Hale says that they're recording it in March. I was a bit curious about that. Maybe it's just a mistake because obviously this is the part two and those revelations about the emails have only just come out. So perhaps it's just a mistake. Anyway, that's just a bit of a sideline. I'm just making this quick video just while it's fresh in my mind. It was a bit towards the end where David Rose says he thinks it's going to take at least a year for the CCRC to make a decision, whether it's yay or nay or whatever, but take at least a year. I hope that isn't the case. Why should it take at least a year? I'm not having a go at him, but, it's the CCRC, why should it take that long? Anyway, it's kind of an open question, really. They like to take a lot of time, when it's someone else's life on the line, don't they, these organisations, The old wheels grinding exceedingly slow kind of bollocks, when it's not their lives on the line, Anyway, there's some curious bits in it I found when David Rose starts talking about, and obviously he's had sight of a lot of documentation that I don't think, well, obviously I haven't had it, and other people talking about this haven't had it directly, but some of it seems to not so much contradict, but it seems slightly different from information we thought we knew so far, or thus far. And this is assuming that, and I totally appreciate that David Rose obviously is very deep into this, but it's quite possible in a podcast you can, numbers can be sort of mixed up, and there's so much detail there, it's quite easy to make a mistake. I'm not saying he hasn't made a mistake, but the thing I wanted to hone in on is this idea that David Rose says he starts talking about Dowie Evans and that the police he's got some documentation from the police meeting, or the record of the police meeting in October 2017. Just prior to that, he says that Dowie Evans was given 28 cases to look at. We're going to come to this definitions aspect of cases and incidents here. But hitherto, we'd always thought he'd been given 32 cases. And that seems to be, in and of itself, was a kind of a bit of a movable feast, as it were, it being Easter now. In the early reporting, sometimes it was 30, sometimes it was 33. It's 32 seemed to be you can look at the appeal court findings. I think they finish at 32, but he seems to say 28. This is a curious thing now. So yeah, it's just so many numbers flying around, and we had this with mortality figures already. And I've said it before, don't trust the mortality figures, either the updated ones or the 2018 FOIs either. But that's another whole other ball of wax and another rabbit hole to go down, which we'll probably never be able to reach the end of. But in terms of these cases vis-a-vis incidents, so David Rose is saying that Evans has given 28 cases. So is a case, again, the question, is a case an individual child? So let's say it is, and then David Rose goes on to say that Evan then chooses 28 incidents. So an incident isn't a case necessarily. I mean, an individual case can have multiple incidents, as indeed it did, because you end up with an indictment where you've got more than one incident. You can have up to 3 incidents, 3 attempted murders for one child. That's 3 incidents for a case, if you see what I mean. Just trying to get down to the definitions here. And David Rose says, the point he makes in this podcast here is that Evan, and this is from what he's seen of this police meeting, the documentation or the records of it from October 2017, where Evans chooses 28 incidents, not cases, but incidents, from which 10 of them can't be pursued. I'm not sure exactly how he knows this. I mean, this hasn't been made explicit in terms of documentation. It's not on Thirlwall. I'm presuming it's a document he's got We're not seeing it. I'm not doubting him. Not doubting him. There's nothing to do with that. I'm just saying it's not out there, is it? This document for everyone to see yet. Maybe it never will be. But he's saying there are 10 incidents that Evans has chosen from. This is where all the definitions becomes complicated. He's saying 10 out of the 28 incidents that Evans has chosen, Lucy Letby isn't there on duty, so therefore cannot be pursued. So that leaves 18. Then we go back to the old story of what we thought we knew, which was the idea of Evans being given 32 cases, i.e. 32 sets of notes for 32 separate children, from which he chooses 15 cases. 15 cases. And in 15 cases, in each individual case, you could have multiple incidents. We end up with 21 charges, don't we? So, and then we end up with these two separate, not separate, but they're part of the charges, but we end up with two separate cases being added in 2018, ostensibly from Breary's finding of the smoking gun insulin cases, but actually been told about them a year before by Dr. Z.A. I'm trying to do stuff with the numbers here to kind of make it match, and maybe it's a fool's errand to try to do it when you've got these different definitions of cases and incidents. So there's a disparity in terms of the number of cases that David Rose said Evans was received. He says 28. It just seems a bit tidy that he then talks about 28 incidents. I think he may be misremembering or may not be aware of the number of cases that Evans was sent. Cases being individual sets of notes. I can't see how that definition doesn't apply. But then he's choosing 28 incidents from those. He says 28 cases. We had thought 32 cases initially. Then what's missing? I'm not saying you can't put it all in one podcast, and he's doing obviously it's amazing what he's doing, and it's a brilliant podcast. And the kind of format they've got is that you've got the kind of, and I don't know how constructed it is, and it doesn't matter, but that Andy Hale is someone who doesn't know about this case, so his reactions, and obviously as someone who champions miscarriage of justice cases. He's constantly being shocked and bowled over by the idea that this is even possible. It's got to this stage, and that, of course, it's got to be quashed. It's ridiculous that it's even got here. It's crazy. Obviously, go into a lot about the Shuley stuff as well. But I just want to stick with these incidents and cases aspect. Is what doesn't come up here, and what's never come up in a kind of formal podcast on a big channel, as it were, are the bits that I've been trying to, and I've done it in previous videos, is to kind of look at various articles and pull them together and say, well, it's not just, if it is the case, these 10 incidents that kind of go nowhere from that first batch of notes that Evans gets in July 2017. It is, as per recorded in articles, first of all the New Yorker article, that Evans is sent a second batch, and that is in the that's in the findings from the Court of Appeal. The second batch, that's actually in a formal document that he was sent this second batch. So he's meant to have been sent the second batch, from which he chooses a further 25, quote unquote. Well, the second batch of 28 what? Well, I'm assuming it's 28 sets of notes, i.e. 28 separate children, in addition to the 32 it already had in 2017. So in 2018, this is what he tells, or this is what Rachel Aviv says he says to her after the first arrest, is the phrase used. So after the first arrest, he sends the police another 25 out of the 28. We haven't got hard and fast definitions of incidents and cases, how they intersect those definitions. We haven't got them. And that's why it's all like all these numbers all over the shop. But we're getting these reports. We have had these reports that end up in the New Yorker article of Evans having been sent 28 further cases in 2018. And after the first arrest, i.e. therefore, one can safely infer before the second arrest, so either at the tail end of 2018 or the first bit of 2019, Evans sends the police another 25 cases, or is it incidents? That's the question. But either way, whether it's cases or incidents, they don't seem to go anywhere because they're not added to the indictment. We know they're not added to the indictment because the 17 children, are really made up of that first batch. Are they not? I mean, we're a little bit in the dark here because there's so many numbers and figures and claims being thrown around at different years and several years later. There's not a real clarity on it, really, not in my mind anyway. And I don't, I wrote all this down and I sent it all to Peter Elston as well and other people. Anouk Curry as well. This idea of this various reporting across different reports and what that means or what that should mean. And where I ended up was that Evans potentially sends a further 50 cases, incidents, whatever it is, to the police that are no further actions, or thus far no further action on them. I say 50 because you've got the 25 allegedly after the first arrest, i.e. before the second arrest, so 2018, and then, according to Dr. Phil Hammond, Evans tells Dr. Phil Hammond that he, Evans, sent the police another 25 cases, incidents, in 2020, what would it have been? 2023. Yeah, 2023, because Dr. Phil Hammond reports that last year, and he says that Evans had told him that Evans sent last year, I think after the first trial, but before the retrial of Baby K, another 25 cases after going through all the cases, incidents that he'd looked at. So that's the 50, and now you've got this other 10 here that David Rose is saying. Evans chose as incidents, not cases in terms of 10 separate children necessarily, but 10 incidents which may apply to 10 children or might apply to 6 or 7, because there could be multiple incidents for any one given child. So you've potentially got where I'm going with this is just another potential 10 to add to that potential 50 of possibly 60 shots at it that Evans has that ends up going nowhere, if you see what I mean. But I don't know, 15 do. Well, he chooses 15 cases out of 32. That's what we were told all the way along. And then Breary finds, in quotes, another 2, that's your 17. The 17 with the multiple incidents resolved to end up as 21 charges. Of they dropped the last minute, they dropped the 8th murder charge vis-a-vis Baby K. So yeah, I don't know. That's where I'm going with it. It's just another potential add, another 10 incidents that Evans says such and such a thing happened, and the police. Well, it obviously the implication for the police here is huge. Is that they've been given huge numbers of suspicious incidents that they either can't or don't do anything with. Can't or don't. What's suggested by David Rose is that they can't because Lucy Letby is not on duty. But what screams at you, or should scream at you, is that the police should be thinking this guy's a scattergun machine of suspicion of deliberate harm everywhere. And what we can't do, the police should be thinking, is just simply push those aside because it takes us away from our from our perpetrator that we've got tunnel vision about, and just forget that this our expert is giving us all this other stuff we can't use or won't use or don't use. The implication there is that this is utter corruption in the police in terms of running a decent inquiry that is, and having, there's no justification for them to have faith in their expert, is there? If he's potentially got 60 instances that they either cannot or do not or will not use, but will just another layer of cherry picking of the ones they do use, and they can work it up to this series of charges which end up with the convictions. Hope that makes sense. Crazy town, crazy, but it's a fantastic podcast, and David Rose is great, and obviously they're getting sight of documents that we can't get sight of, and other people don't seem to be able to get sight of, which is absolutely vitally important, isn't it? But I'm just trying to make sense of the reporting from different sources, Dr. Phil Hammond, New Yorker, now what David Rose is saying. What is that saying about Dewey Evans even more so? And what's it saying about the police and the CPS? I mean, we know already it's all a load of... Anyway, I'll leave it there. And I think that's all I wanted to say about it. But I think it's a fantastic format to have someone that at least appears not to know much about it in terms of, but is obviously very clued up and gets it immediately that it's horrendously wrong, It's like, yeah, it really works really well, and I wonder if there'll be another part of it. Take care, everyone. Have a good day there. Is it Maundy Thursday, I think, today, isn't it? It's Thursday, isn't it? Anyway, take care, all the best. Bye-bye.